The Word of Bill includes close to $1 billion for one plan that has a lot in common with Louisiana. In many ways, the Florida Everglades restoration is miles ahead of Louisiana's effort, but people there share many of our frustrations about funding and delays. Tonight, a special report on what progress has been made towards saving a Wonderland. At first glance, you'd swear you had landed in the South Louisiana marsh. In places, it seems a mirror image. For thousands of years, water spilled out of Lake Okeechobee and crept toward the Gulf of Mexico through sawgrass, swamp, and by Louisiana standards, giant mangrove trees. What Floridians proudly call their river of grass. Ada Eric, a hydrologist with the Everglades Foundation, explains the plumbing here used to be a lot different.
Water would flow as a sheet over the land.
The Everglades are the only place in America you will find storks. The only place on Earth where alligators and crocodiles coexist.
There are no other Everglades in the world.
Just as in Louisiana's river delta, man sought to improve on nature, draining, damming, diverting water into canals, an elaborate network of arteries taming what seemed a vast wasteland.
Everybody looks at swamps and says, well, you know, that's a useless thing. No, it's not.
Developers and farmers found other uses for the water. Over half the Everglades were lost as these new highways of water diverted the flow to Florida's east and west coast, putting the system on life support. Parts of the River of Grass ran dry.
The Everglades is like a giant jigsaw puzzle. It's even more complicated. It's almost like a three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle.
Congress approved the Everglades Restoration Plan in the year 2000, $10 billion over 30 years. The idea? Mimic nature to the extent possible, to turn back the clock, providing a drink of fresh water for areas to the south. Just as in Louisiana, there's been a lot of frustration in Florida over the last years. Congress would approve projects, but there never seemed to be any money. Until recently. The Tamiami Trail, an east-west highway in South Florida, effectively acts as one long levee, choking Everglades National Park. Today, crews have elevated the first of 6 miles of roadway that will restore more of the historic flow. The Army Corps of Engineers and the local water district completed the first major projects, including diverting some water back into the park. And crews are now restoring a giant wetland area to the north.
Why should people care about the Everglades? It's like asking, why should you care about the Washington Monument or the Statue of Liberty or the Grand Canyon or any of the other great monuments or places that we have in our country? The Everglades are part of our natural history. It is a gift to us, and it's our responsibility to make sure that this gift is passed on to future generations.
This issue is not just for tree huggers. Turns out fresh water feeding the Everglades also seeps into a giant aquifer, providing drinking water to 7 million people, including all of Greater Miami.
When I come and I talk to people about birds, they're like, whatever, my favorite kind of bird is fried. So it's like, all right, that's not going to work. And then you tell them, well, do you like to drink some water with that? And that's when they realize, okay, this is important.
Save our river! Save our river!
Last summer, protesters greeted Florida Governor Rick Scott, essentially demanding he fix the plumbing. Heavy rains forced the Corps to divert even more water than usual into estuaries on Florida's east and west coasts.
This is microcystis algae, the toxic blue-green algae.
Polluted water sparked algae blooms, killed wildlife, and devastated fishing communities in what locals dubbed the lost summer.
It drove home the issue of why this matters.
Florida fights some of the same obstacles as Louisiana, a huge backlog of water projects around the country, each competing for limited dollars.
We're not getting the federal authorizations and funding resources that we need.
That slows the pace of recovery, yet for those projects that have been completed, the early signs are positive as vegetation springs back to life and some wildlife returns. Experts say it's too early to say how well the projects are working.
Of course, we didn't impact the Everglades overnight. It's going to take many, many years to correct a lot of the mistakes that we now realize.
The Everglades' staunchest advocates concede others are watching Florida closely to see if this first major restoration actually works.
Because it really is the model for many other projects. If we can do this successfully, we hope it is a template for success that can be used elsewhere.
I think we've got a one-time shot at this. We are on the right track. If we fail, well, the Everglades fails. There is no option for failure.
Advocates were screaming last week about what they saw as a serious setback. The Army Corps of Engineers had a review panel that missed a deadline to complete the study of about 6 major projects that have been bundled together, a couple $2 billion in work. The Corps insists that the projects are still on a fast track and that it's a minor delay to make sure that everything's done correctly and legally, and the review panel could complete its work by this summer. So there's a disagreement about whether it would have made it into this big water bill anyway. This is a long way from reality. It is not guaranteed, as we'll talk about in a second part coming up on Monday. But Florida is, some people think, helping itself in ways that Louisiana is not. And we'll explore that next.
Well, that's interesting. All right, we'll see that in the next report. Thanks.